Good evening, and welcome to our Back to School webinar. My name is Drake Smith, a senior at Meade High School and student member of the Anne Arundel County Board of Education. I will be your moderator for this evening. The first day of school is right around the corner, but this will not be an average first day because the school year will start virtually. This will be uncharted territory for all of us. Instead of going off to school, the school will now be coming to the students. Instead of walking through classroom doors, students will be logging on to Google Classroom. But just like any other year, teachers will nurture students to grow their spirits and minds. Tonight will be a chance for you to get insight directly from Superintendent Arlotto on what to expect when school starts 1 week from today. Over the next hour, Dr. Arlotto will be responding to questions previously submitted by students and parents. I will now turn it over to Dr. Arlotto for a few opening remarks. Dr. Arlotto, the floor is now yours.
Fantastic. Thank you, Drake. Thank you for your vision, and thank you for your continued keen focus on students, because the students elected you, right? And you're representing them and you're their voice. So thank you for that. So I'm delighted with the opportunity to, as always, spend time with students. It's certainly my favorite thing to do as a superintendent, and I am I'm honored to spend this next hour with you. In terms of the upcoming school year, it's exciting. Any school year, the opening of school year for us educators is just incredibly exciting. This one is even more so because it's so different. Opening the school year virtually is not anything any of us dreamed of or hoped for. I certainly didn't sign up to be a superintendent of a virtual school system. I want to be a superintendent of a school system where I can go into buildings and interact with students and staff, because that's where key relationships are built each and every day. And so that's important to us. So that said, we all want the same thing. We want our students to return to the schools. We want our staffs back in school buildings, and we want to continue to build those awesome relationships that the teaching and learning process, the face-to-face teaching and learning process, allows for us to do. So, but with this, with what we are given in the circumstance that we're in, my encouragement to students is to make the best of it. We are all in the same place. We're all in the same place across the state of Maryland, and for the most part across the country. Most school systems, particularly large school systems like ours, are beginning the year virtually. Our hope, of course, is that over the course of time, as safe and healthy environments will allow, we want to bring students back into the buildings. And we were going to do that as soon as possible, as quickly as possible, as we work with our Department of Health, and for health and safety guidelines will allow. So I encourage you to take advantage of what is offered. Certainly you get to stay home, so you don't have to worry about the commute. You don't have to about walking in the rain or the snow and waiting for a bus. Those are all things that you can take advantage of. And certainly this online process, I think, will, as students learn more about it and engage with it, it will put you in a better place for the future. I think this is where we're headed in education. I think that as a student, as you go off to college, whether it's 4-year or 2-year, or you're involved in your own career development in the trades, or even going into the military, you will be engaged in some kind of online learning. And so this is a way for us to really work hard to get it right, so that you can learn from it and you can take what you learn with us, and hopefully what is a short period of time in online learning, but it could be extended. We don't know, because we can't predict the outcome of the pandemic and the outcome on our community, but we can plan for that. And so I encourage you to take advantage of it, and as they say, take those lemons and make lemonade, and take full advantage of what we're able to offer. I can tell you that your teachers and your administrators at your schools have worked incredibly hard and wonderfully collaboratively to plan for this school year. What you experienced in the spring, and we had to pivot to online learning in a very short period of time. Your lives changed, your teachers' lives changed, your administrators' lives changed, your parents' lives changed in a very short period of time as a result of COVID-19. And so what you experience in terms of online learning is going to be very different than what you're going to experience this fall. as I said, your teachers and your administrators, this school system worked really, really hard to prepare for this coming fall. It wasn't quite inevitable going into the summer, but as we got into July and conversations with our county health officer and we saw that we were going to have to go virtual, that's where we focused our efforts. I could tell you that your teachers, administrators took full advantage of that time and participated in a record amount of professional development to learn how to work with students online. How you deliver instruction in the classroom is very different than how you deliver that same instruction in an online environment. That's obvious to all of us. But what's not obvious is the time it takes to learn how to do that well, to engage students well in this online environment. So I encourage you to take advantage of it. I encourage you to give it time. And as you've heard me say since March 16th, when we closed schools, patience and grace for all of us as we learn this new process. But I think your teachers are ready. We are ready for the new school year. And I look forward to visiting your virtual classrooms and soon, hopefully, to see you in your brick and mortar schools as quickly as possible. So with that, I welcome you. Thank you for the opportunity. And Drake, let's jump into the questions.
Thanks, Dr. Arlotto. And just another silver lining, you only had to buy shirts this year, right? You only had to buy shoes, pants. Now you just had to buy shirts. Just one silver lining.
Okay, and there's another, right? We'll take full advantage of that.
Yeah. So, Doc, you kind of already touched on how we got to this point. So I guess we can move on to the next question. North County High School senior asks, what is the first week looking like? Are we going to start on B Day or start it on an A Day? Just not have the extra help Wednesday.
So I think that's a great question. Our schedule, while it's an every other day schedule like you're used to at the high school level, it won't rotate into the next week. So you could have, so that means that based on the high school schedule, Mondays will be an A day, Tuesdays will be a B day. So Thursdays will be an A day, Fridays will be a B day. You'll know that going in. You won't have that rotation that you're used to in your schools with that off day. So we're starting on a Tuesday, so we'll start with a B day.
Great. Central Middle 8th grader asks, what is the best way for students to get to know their teachers? Do you have a plan for introduction or meet and greet sessions?
Yeah, so again, another really good question. So we thought a lot about that because you're used to your first week of school in your regular classrooms with your teachers. The teachers spend some time getting to know you and spending some of that time. So we're asking teachers to do the same. You might not jump in. My guess is you won't jump immediately into instruction into that 1B class on Tuesday or all of your classes for the first week. We're encouraging teachers to spend some time to build those relationships. We know they're going to be more difficult and challenging in this online environment, yet we're going to be asking teachers to spend that time, that quality time with students getting to know their teacher and the other students in their classes, so we can move forward into the future. So that will be part of how the first week of classes will be built.
Great, still building those connections. A 10th grader from the brand new Crofton High School asks, can we still get absences even though it's online?
And the answer is yes. So we are obligated to take attendance. That's a state rule. It's what's called COMAR. And so we are obligated, and that has not been waived in this current environment. So across the state, we are required to take attendance. So attendance will be taken in each of your classes, just like it would if you were in Crofton High School, in your regular brand new building and brand new 10th grader to that building. We are required to take attendance. And so at the secondary level, middle schools and high schools, they'll take attendance in each one of your period classes, just like they would if you were in that school building.
Okay, great. An Old Mill 6th grader asks, Old Mill North 6th grader, are grades going to be normal or pass and fail like last quarter? And
so great. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Drake. I interrupted you.
I'm sorry. It's a two-parter, and the second half is, will classes be recorded so you can watch later if there's a problem with internet connection?
Yeah. So again, two great questions. So the first is regarding grading, is we are returning to, in the new school year, we are returning to our regular grading processes and procedures. So the pass fail and what existed, what the board undertook in terms of what our gradings would look like last spring, it was only applicable to the end of last school year. So we start a new school year, and so we are going back to our grading processes and procedures. Let me say, however, that we've put out some information and talked to our principals, and principals are talking to teachers, but we've put out some specific information to our teachers about grading in this environment. While we will follow our regular grading processes and procedures, we're going to ask that teachers really keep in mind flexibility and grace, because not every student will have the same kind of access on a day-to-day basis that the entire class would. So we want to give them some time, some grace period in terms of deadlines for when, for example, when assignments are due. So that leads me into responding to the second part, I'm sorry, Drake, I just lost my complete train of thought. The second part of the question was?
Yeah, of course. Will classes be recorded so you can watch
Right.
later if there's a problem with internet
Right,
connection?
perfect. So thank you for that. I had a senior moment there. It happens at my age. So that leads me directly into answering that second part, in that, yes, our plan is to record classes, because we know, as I said in responding to the first part of the question, we know that not every student, every family is in exactly the same place in terms of their access to the internet. Their internet on any given day could go out. I've experienced it. You've experienced it. And so we would not hold students to that if their internet went out, if they're unable to attend class because they didn't feel well, or they had a medical appointment, a doctor's appointment, just like you would if we were in our regular school. So our plan is to record the lessons. The teachers will let you know when they are turning on the recording and that they are recording that lesson. The teachers will post that to their Google Classroom, and it'll be available for 2 weeks so that students can go back and watch that. If I missed the lesson, if I wasn't feeling well, or I was there for that lesson, but I want to go back and re-review it. And so I'll have 2 weeks to do that. And then after 2 weeks, the teachers will post that to their archives. That will only be accessible to the students in that classroom. Those recordings will not be accessible to the general public. We won't post them to the general public. Only students that are registered in that course and have access. And as you know, through what you went through last spring, for those of you that were with us, when you enter into a Google Classroom, your teacher only allows access to the students that are enrolled in that class. So students from other classes can't come into your classroom. That's part of a safety feature that we have, but it's also part of an access feature. So as students, so those lessons are recorded. They're only accessible to the students that have access to that class period and that class based on the enrollment of that teacher. So yes, we will be recording it and post it to the Google Classroom for those very reasons, that students can access them at a later date.
Great. And I think that was a perfect segue to our next question from a senior from Severna Park High School. Are teachers allowed to make it mandatory that students need to turn their cameras on for tests? Could a student ask to keep their camera on for privacy/comfort? So I guess not just tests, but also just the general class period.
Yeah, so in short, we're going to ask that the students have their cameras on. We'll be sending out later this week a form, an online form for parents to complete that they'll have a chance to review, that will allow them to agree to allow their child's for their child to be recorded in that lesson. So as I said, the teacher will announce it in advance. Okay, I'm turning on my recording now, my camera, and we will be recording. So the parents will have a chance to opt out of both video recording and voice recording. And so that will go out later this week for parents to review that form. They'll be able to check that. And because it's an online form, it'll immediately populate our online database so we can keep track of that. We'll ask that students that, as best they can, keep their cameras on so that we believe in what we learned last spring. Because we did so much asynchronous learning, meaning it wasn't in real time, that one of the things that we heard from parents and students and teachers was that we need more face-to-face time, just like you and I are interacting right now. That teachers can see students and students can see their teachers, and they can build those relationships and they can interact in real time. So we know that that was important for our community, and that's the reason we built in so much more synchronous real-time learning for our students and our teachers. And so with that, if everybody's got their cameras turned off, that doesn't allow for that kind of interaction. So we'll ask that they do turn them on. Parents will have a chance to opt out of either voice or video recording. We hope that they will allow us to record so that it can be used for the future, because it's also important for not only to see and hear the teacher, but listen to your classmates responding to questions, asking questions, talking amongst themselves. That's also part, as you know, that classroom experience. And so we hope that they'll take advantage of that. But we know that there'll be circumstances where that might not be appropriate for a variety of reasons. And so we'll give parents a chance to opt out.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Arlotto. And it seems tonight, the Cardinals are making a real big impact because we have another Crofton High School 10th grader. Will Google Classroom allow us to do breakout groups for small group assignments and opportunities for social activities?
So yes, my understanding, I'm not an expert at Google Classroom. Let me make that perfectly clear. My understanding is that Google has been able to build that into, I think it's Google Meets, not necessarily Google Classroom, but Google Meets will allow for small breakout sessions that the teacher then can monitor from their screen. If there are, let's say, 3 or 4 breakout groups, the teacher will be able to monitor from their screen those individual or small group conversations. So my understanding is yes, that's sort of a new addition to Google Meets. I haven't used it, so I'm not going to try and explain it because I really don't know it from firsthand experience. But yes, we'll be able to do those small group breakouts, which of course, as the questioner asks, one allows some of that group work to occur, which we know is important and occurs in a regular classroom, right? Sort of turn and talk or turn your desks in small groups and work on a physics problem, if you will. But it also allows for that important social interaction that we know was missing last spring. And so we're very cognizant of that, and we want that to occur in this fall schedule while we're in the virtual environment.
Great, because that turn and talk from what I remember in first grade, some of those students became some of my best friends.
Right.
Those relationships. Great. And our next question comes from students in the Broadneck cluster. Zoom fatigue has been shown to be a real phenomenon that affects those who work or learn during live internet-based meetings. How will the county address this?
Yeah, so we've addressed it through our schedule. Normally, for instance, your class schedule, if you were at Broadneck High School, would be that 90-minute class, right? That hour and a half class for your class. So we know that for sitting for that long during 4 class periods is going to be exhausting. I can tell you, I spend now since March, spend my whole day either on the phone or in these kinds of meetings. And as much as I love my adult colleagues, sometimes it's exhausting. And so we get that. So the class periods have been built for the high school schedule at 45-minute intervals with breaks. Sometimes things that are required and sometimes things that are not required for those students to participate in, because we know that there is some of that fatigue built in to spending time on the screen with your colleagues and with your classmates and with your teachers. So we reduced the amount of time in each of those classes. We reduced the amount of time during the course of the day that you would be engaged that way.
Okay, great. And this next question comes from another Crofton High Schooler, but this time a 9th grader. How are science and technology labs going to work in this virtual environment?
Yeah, so that's kind of tricky. And you can imagine, and that's the reason that this 9th grader from Crofton asked the question, because you don't have that ability for hands-on chemistry or biology or physics or environmental science. And so it is a little tricky. What we do have is there are, and I should preface this by saying, online instruction is not brand new. We are not reinventing the wheel in online instruction. What we're doing is we're taking what's out there, we're having to integrate it into an environment that we just simply are not used to. So there are online applications and programs that we have purchased or will take advantage of in many different areas. Not all, but those that exist. We went out and purchased some online programs, as I said, some software that will allow for some very unique experiences in the sciences, in conducting labs, because there's been homeschooling and there's been online classes, particularly at the college level for some time. So it's not brand new. We're not reinventing the wheel. So we have been investigating that and we'll take advantage of much of that, particularly in the advanced placement in the IB world. The College Board that runs advanced placement and the International Baccalaureate that runs the IB program, they've been preparing in going to the online environment, have been preparing, taking advantage of expert teachers in various fields and producing model lessons in many areas, particularly those areas where there is some sort of hands-on laboratory work. So we'll take full advantage of that. And your AP teachers or IP teachers will take advantage of that and integrate that into your classes.
Great. I'll be looking forward to that. And I guess you kind of touched on it a little bit with the College Board, but this one is from a Severna Park high schooler. I mean, a Severna Park senior, excuse me. They say, will AACPS be administering the SAT this fall? SAT or ACT?
Yeah, so yes, the short answer is yes. But let me take a little bit of time, if you don't mind, Drake, to talk a little bit about that. So yes, our plan, we know how important the SAT is as students are exploring their options beyond Anne Arundel County Public Schools and beginning that process of applying to colleges and universities. And so we know how important that is. I am the father of three that have gone through that process, taking the SAT, preparing for it, and taking the SAT. I've also been a high school principal, so I know sort of the angst that goes around that for teachers, for students, and certainly their families. So the answer is yes, we are going to, our hope is to administer the SAT, understanding that the College Board takes ownership of the SAT. We do not. And so SAT is administered in basically two different fashions. It's done one either on a Saturday where the student registers online and then they can decide which school they want to take the SAT at, whether it's in Anne Arundel County or outside of Anne Arundel County. And that's all done between the student and parent and the College Board. The other way of taking the SAT is when the school system, like us, administer the SAT on what we call a school day. It's called a school day administration. And as you know, we have done that for a number of years where we take a day in the fall, typically, well, I should say that. We typically take a day in the spring, it's usually in April, and we work that out with College Board, and they allow us to administer the SAT during the school day. And as you know, we typically alter that day. Our younger students don't have class in the morning. We do a half a day at the high school, and juniors typically come in and they take the SAT. And then in the second half of the day, we have regular classes. So Drake, as you know, as a junior last year, you were not able to take the SAT in the spring because of the pandemic, because of COVID-19 and school closures. We had to cancel our school day administration of the SAT, unfortunately. And we in Anne Arundel County Public Schools, and as a member of the Board of Education, the student member of the Board of Education, we have an over $1 billion budget. And part of that budget, we set aside money to pay for our juniors to take the SAT. Because we weren't able to do that last spring, we talked to the College Board and they allowed us to take that money that we had set aside and paid them to administer the SAT last spring. They allowed us to roll that forward so that this fall, in October, we plan to, on a school day, on a Wednesday, we plan to administer the SAT to the seniors. So Drake, that would include you, and I'm using you as an example. Juniors last spring were not able to take it, even though we had paid for it. We met with the college board over time. They've allowed us to roll that forward, and our plan is to administer the SAT this fall in our high schools to our high school seniors, and we, the school system, will have paid for it. And so all of our seniors will have that opportunity to do that. Now you can imagine that will be no easy feat. It will be thousands of seniors that we will have to secure proctors, create spaces that there's enough space in between each of the test takers in each room, spread them out across an entire high school. But we are working on those plans that we will coordinate with both the College Board and our Department of Health. But our plan is, yes, much more than you ever wanted to know, but it's a great question. And many people have been asking that our plan is to administer the SAT in October for our seniors.
Great, thank you, Dr. Arlotto. And just like, with the SAT cancellation, there's a silver lining to everything. Some students were actually happy about that, because
Okay,
SAT.
I will reserve comment for that, but we know it is important to many, and so we will. Our plan is because during the school day we have control of it. During the Saturday administrations, the local school system does not have control of it. The College Board utilizes our buildings, but the operation of an SAT inside our schools on a Saturday, we don't have control over it. That's a contract with the College Board separately, but during the school day we do. And so our plan is to offer it again to our seniors to roll forward what they weren't able to take advantage of last spring as juniors.
Great. Hopefully they took advantage of that extra study time. So our next question comes from a Crofton Middle School sixth grader. How do flex days work with encore classes? My 5A and 5B are on different days. How do I know which one to log into for instruction?
Yeah, so we tried to, this is, I think it's actually kind of ingenious of our academics team, as they were working collaboratively with many folks to develop schedules, that we were trying to find ways to build, we're calling it flex time, but for those, the best way to equate it, I think, for those students that, if you're at South River and you've got Nest Hour, or you're at Broadneck High School and you have Bruin Block, or you are at Arundel High School and you've got Wildcat Hour, that's time where you can decide during that period of time at your school to go back to see a teacher, to finish a test or quiz, or to get some extra help, or I was absent the day before and I want to find out what I missed. It's your ability to go back and get some additional help. So what we built in, I'm putting on my glasses just because I've got the schedule in front of me, is building in that flex time where students can go back and get some of that extra help, go back and work some problems with their teacher. But we also know that in this environment, you just can't go back to any teacher at any time. It's not that simple as walking down the hallway and going from 101, then upstairs to room 201 to see your Spanish teacher and then your physics teacher, right? We don't have that ability. So we had to create some structure to the flex time so that teachers and students know when I can go back to which teacher. So on Mondays, that's flex time. Just using an example for 1A and 1B. I know that for my 1A class and my 1B class, that's time to go back to that teacher, because that teacher is going to be anticipating and expecting students from their 1A and their 1B, if that makes sense. If I don't have anything to go back and I don't really feel like I need to talk to the teacher about something, then that's time you don't have to utilize. You don't have to engage with the teacher. That could be time you can utilize to study or prepare for your next class or review your notes, whatever it might be. It's also a time that the teacher will specifically invite students to come in, knowing that if I was in my 1B class, that on that Monday, that teacher knows that I missed that day or didn't perform particularly well on an assessment, they may very well specifically invite me back and say, you know what, George, I'd like you to come in and see me at our next flex time on Monday, and let's talk about your test or quiz or what you missed because you were absent the day before. So we wanted to create some flexibility, like your Wildcat hour or Mustang hour or whatever it is. But at the same time, knowing in this environment, you just can't go back and log in to see any teacher at any time because of the online environment. So this creates some specific times that you can go back and do that and know that the teacher will be anticipating students from those classes to log in.
Great. And just so we're clear, if like you said, if you're I guess proficient in your classes, right, you don't really have anything to review, you still have to be logged in to a class at that time?
You do not. That's student choice.
Okay.
Now the teacher might say, again, using that last example, Drake, I really need you to, or I want you to log in and let's go over some things. The expectation is that you would do that. Just like the expectation is that you would go back to their class during that Wildcat hour. And so the same kind of flexibility is built in, but if you've not been requested by the teacher, nor you don't feel you need to go back at that time, that will be student downtime.
Great.
It's student choice.
Great. And our next question comes from Annapolis High School 12th grader. During this summer, students on free and reduced lunch were giving PEBT cards for the months we weren't at school. Since school will continue to be closed, will these cards be refilled?
So I'm not sure that I completely understand the question. We, the school system, did not distribute any debit cards to students because we continued to serve meals. So we, the school system, did not distribute any debit cards to students. As you know, we were, Drake, and to those listening in, we've been serving meals since over 2 million meals since March 16th. And we will continue to serve breakfast and lunch every day that school is in session throughout the fall and winter at curbside. So students and families will be able to come by and pick up meals. We'll continue to do that, but I don't have a direct response to, we didn't distribute debit cards to students, so I'm not sure exactly where that is coming from.
Okay, they must have got that confused with maybe a government agency.
It could have been a different group that was doing that. I can't answer for them, but we didn't distribute debit cards to students.
Great. And then the South River senior asks, how does materials pickup work for the new school year? I'm seeing other high schools calling some students in to get materials, and I'm not sure if I missed a message. Is there a centralized plan or anything like that?
Yeah, so the short answer is yes, there is a plan. Every school is doing it just slightly differently between what Annapolis is going to do or South River or North County. But yes, they should be this. You should hear from your school. If you don't, call the school and say, I haven't heard. Maybe the number or email we have is incorrect, and maybe you did miss the message. But by all means, if you haven't heard yet, get in touch with the school, and they'll give you directions on picking up a Chromebook if needed, as well as course materials if needed. That will also be something that your teachers will cover, of course, during the first week of class, about the course materials and things that you need and what they'll be providing online. But anything that's a physical material that we're going to be able to distribute, your schools will be able to do that. And so if you haven't heard yet, please reach out to your school.
Great. And this next question has to do with the school year calendar. You touched on the daily calendar, but this is about, the entire year. This comes from a Chesapeake High School 9th grader. Are we still following the 2020-2021 school year calendar? So I know when they are doing school, when school closed 2 hours early, for 2-hour early dismissals or for virtual learning. Sorry, the word is tricky on that.
So we are. I'm sorry, I interrupted you again. There's more to that question.
I was saying the wording was a little tricky. They're just asking if the 2020-2021 school year, are we still following the same calendar with half?
And the answer is yes. Our calendar for this school year remains unchanged. If and when, if we ever do have to alter that schedule, we'll make that completely public for everybody to know. And in fact, a school calendar is in the purview of the school board. So if any changes needed to be made, it would have to come publicly before the Board of Education during a public meeting. It would have to be discussed, and then any changes would have to be approved and voted on by the Board of Education. But as of right now, there are no changes to our schedule. So if on the calendar, I shouldn't say schedule, on the calendar, excuse me, if a particular date says there's a 2-hour early dismissal, we will still have a 2-hour early dismissal, meaning if it's on a Monday and there's a 2-hour early dismissal, you'll have your morning classes just like you would in brick and mortar, and you won't have your afternoon classes.
Great. This next question comes from an 11th grader from Old Mill High School. What could really help us students be more comfortable and less stressed about this school year?
Boy, that's a fabulous question, because that's really, really important. My recommendation is that, several things. Understand that all of your classmates, all of your schoolmates are in the same place that you are. It's not an individual thing. It's everybody is in the same place, including high school students from across the state and most of the country, that we're all having to adapt. And so it's okay to not be okay, right? It's okay to understand that this is different and there is some stress involved, because it's the stress of the unknown. I would also say that I'm really confident that just like how students get nervous before the beginning of the school year with the unknown of meeting your teachers and meeting your classmates and figuring out the hallways and is my locker going to work or not work? And then as the school year starts, all of those worries dissipate, right? Because you get into the routine and you learn what it's all about. And so I'm really confident that your teachers and administrators, your counselors are all going to want to work with you to learn this new environment. Part of what will happen over the course of the opening weeks of school will be learning that environment, with teachers checking to say, is everybody able to log in? Does everybody figure out where the homework is and the schedule and the syllabus? And let's all test the going into the breakout rooms. Let's go through that process and let's learn together. And so you're absolutely right to be nervous. And we're all really stressed out. Your teachers are, your principals are, I am as the superintendent, just like you are. Because why? Because we want it to go really well. You want to be successful as a student, and we live for you to be successful as a student. So we're all a little bit nervous. We're going to get through this together. And that's where I started, that we're all sort of in this together. You're not alone in this. So ask questions, reach out. There is, in terms of a high school student and others, there is office time built into the schedule, 3 days a week. Take advantage of that. Go one-on-one with your teacher and ask some questions and get some individual help. Go back at flex time and say, I didn't understand that, or you can help me better understand that. So you are going to be a little more independent, and that's sort of what undergirds online learning is you don't have your teacher in front of you all of the time throughout the day. You don't have somebody guiding you through the hallways from one class to the next. You're going to have to work on some of your own independence. Let us help you with that. Make sure that folks at home help you with that. But you're going to be okay, that we're going to get through this together. And sooner rather than later, I think we're going to be back in schools where we're all going to feel much more comfortable.
Great. I think this kind of fits the bill to all my High School Musical fans out there. We're all in this together, like the song.
Absolutely.
And our next question comes from an Annapolis Middle 7th grader. Mm-hmm. Do we have to wear uniform shirts while doing virtual learning? This is a fun question, I guess.
You know, Drake, that's a fact. I have not been asked that question. And I can tell you to date, in all the planning meetings I've been in up to this point, I've not been part of a meeting where somebody has asked if a school, and I think I'm going to say this generally based on what the student from Annapolis asks, that any school that has a uniform, are they required to wear that uniform when they're in online class? I've not been asked that question. I've not been part of a group that um, has thought about that, though they probably have. I just haven't been privy to that. So let me find out an answer to that. Um, um, uh, I don't know that we would attempt to enforce a dress code in an online environment, but let me find out more, and then we will post that response to that to our frequently asked questions. Um, uh, um, and we'll post an answer that question, Drake, and a response to that question on our frequently asked questions part of our online e-learning website. We've got a running list. If you haven't seen it, I encourage all students and parents to visit that site frequently, as wonderful questions like that are being asked that we don't have responses to. We are working with our team to get a response, and then we are posting responses to that. What I am, let me share with you, if you don't mind, Drake. I'm looking at my phone, not to be rude, but my members of my team are listening in, and they're going to help me respond to questions that I don't have responses to. And I'm told that uniforms are encouraged for the school that has a uniform policy, but they are not required. So they're encouraged so that students feel like they're getting up and getting dressed and being part of their regular school day. We're encouraging you to do that, but it's not required. So thank you to my team for helping me respond to that.
Great, great. You know, I mean, another upside is you can keep your pajama pants on. You know, uniform shirt, pajama pants.
As you said from the outset, Drake, you only have to go shopping from the waist up.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I think it's a good practice, and I think you'll see some research in online learning will say that, and I would encourage students that as they enter into their online day each and every day, that they that they uh, that they get out of their pajamas. While you certainly could do that, that you change and you get dressed for the day, right? Dressed for success and dressed for the day, because it should feel different, right? Just me sitting in my bedroom um, and uh, uh, and streaming Netflix, and me sitting in my bedroom, and I've got an online physics class with my teacher and fellow students, classmates. There should be something different about that. And so preparing for the day and having my maybe a glass of water by my side or a snack, and getting dressed and being ready for the day, put you into that mindset of this is different, this is special. In fact, I would encourage students that if they're able to set up a place somewhere else outside of their bedroom to engage in their learning. Some students have put together with their parents their own classrooms in the basement or in the dining room or in the living room. We even have that set up for my youngest daughter is now a college freshman. Her school did not open this fall. She is learning virtually. So we set her up with a different space in her sister's room so that she can leave her room and go in her sister's room with a desk and her computer and screen, and she can engage in her online college classes so that it can be a different part of the day. So I guess all that said, I'm encouraging students that it's not required that you wear a uniform, but maybe it's not such a bad idea to get ready for the day and say, when I'm in my uniform, I know I'm in school.
Let's get back to that what schedule, that structure. Right? And the next question is, this comes from a this comes from I already asked that question. Excuse me. Oh, this next question is from a parent of an Oakwood Elementary School fifth grader. How can I help my children in grades 6 and 5 if I'm not capable to teach them? I don't want to embarrass myself, but if it helps, I will try.
So again, another really good question for our parents. So you're, I'm of the belief that you are never embarrassing your children, or should be embarrassed when you're working with your children and you're working to help them out. But that said, the expectation is that you are not teaching your children. That's what we should be doing. But rather, you should focus on helping create an appropriate space for the students to do their online learning, that you are helping that the house is quiet, and that there is a good online learning environment for the student to participate in their online classes. That you will stay in touch with your child's teachers so that you can know what's happening. One of the silver linings, and to use your terms, Drake, is that typically when we're in brick and mortar schools, parents don't get to sit in on classes on a regular basis. But in an online environment, if you're at home with your child during the online class learning, you certainly could sit in and listen into the class. And so you'll know more about what's happening and how your student is engaging with their teachers. And so that is certainly an option. So I think it's a great question. It's not an expectation that you are teaching the math lesson or teaching the reading lesson, that you allow the teacher to do that and encourage your student to take advantage of office hours or flex time when they don't understand and you're not able to explain it to them, that you encourage them to take advantage of the time we built into the online schedule so they can go back and talk to their teacher to get some additional learning done. Also, particularly because the parent talked about a sixth grader, we are building with teachers online tutoring for different courses for middle school and high school students in the evening. So we're going to be publishing a schedule where parents can encourage their student if they need some extra help and you aren't able to help them at home, which is not the expectation, that we will have online tutoring for students in the evenings, Monday through Thursday and Sunday evenings, where students can go in and get help in algebra or physics or English 10 or whatever the course will be. It won't necessarily be that child's teacher that's teaching that class, but it will be teachers, and we've taken advantage of some federal tutoring grant monies that have been made accessible through the federal government and the COVID relief funds. We've taken advantage of that to allow teachers to sign up and be paid Monday through Thursday and Sunday evenings to do some online tutoring. And so again, here's something that parents could take advantage of. And if you're unable to help your child, which again is not the expectation, that you encourage them to take advantage of the online tutoring, both during the day and certainly in the evenings, that will be made available to our middle school and high school students.
Great. Our next question is a parent question as well from another parent from Overlook Elementary. How can I get assistance with how to set up classrooms online? I'm not computer savvy, but I'm willing to learn. Is there a workshop or an orientation for those parents who have been unable to connect?
So again, another really good question. So we've made some of our help desk personnel available in the evenings and during the day to help parents if they need some assistance with the Chromebook and their child accessing the Chromebook if there are some technical issues. So we've made some of our help desk staff available that way. I'm not sure I know exactly what the parent means, Drake, by setting up an online classroom, because that's something the teacher will do. The teacher will set up their individual classrooms. The counselor will have an individual classroom. The TA will have an individual classroom. Any person in the school building that works directly with students will set up their own Google space, their own Google Classroom, and their own Google Meets or Google Voice to communicate with that student. So again, Drake, your counselor will set up a Google Classroom and a Google Meet so that they can interact with you and all the other students that are on their counseling caseload. So it's not necessary that a parent make their own Google Classroom, because we will do that. But the second part of the question, as I interpret it, Drake, is how can parents become more savvy in this online world? And so we are, there are some, I referenced it on our e-learning site, there are some references and some things that parents can take advantage of about how to navigate the online and Google world. So there are already some things that we've posted. We also piloted at 2 elementary schools earlier this summer under the direction of Dr. Gillens at our Office of Equity and Accelerated Student Achievement, along with our Instructional Technology Office, piloted a parent evenings for 2 elementary schools for parents to sign in and get some online learning about the online environment and what they could learn, and then also how they could help their student learn in the online environment. That went really well. And we had over 100 parents sign up and participate in that out of the 2 elementary schools that we piloted with. And so our plan is to expand that to more schools so that more parents can take advantage of some of those online environment. We're also going to be creating some videos for parents to watch from home about the online environment, and so they can learn more about the Google environment and how that works and how their child will interact with it. And we'll be creating those videos and posting that on our e-learning website.
Great. And I guess my next question is,
and let me interrupt. I'm sorry. One of my teammates let me know via text that we are posting this in response to that last question, Drake. We are posting family video tips for virtual learning tomorrow, Wednesday, on our virtual learning site. So there'll be additional, as I talked about, some video tips for parents, and that'll be posted tomorrow.
Great. Dr. Arlotto, you got to start saying this just in, like we do on the news.
I will do that next time.
And our next question, this is a kind of a combination. I've gotten a question from a wrestler from Meade High School in 11th grade and a soccer player from Chesapeake High School, also in 11th grade. So they're both wondering about sports, right? Are they going to happen? If they are, what are they going to look like? Or if they're just not going to happen at all?
Yeah, so again, this is another really important aspect of the high school experience, not just athletics, but the band and the robotics club and all those things. So there are those curricular programs, the teaching and learning during the school day, and there are those co-curricular programs that are equally as important in the life of a high schooler. And so we know that athletics is important. Because the question is specific to that, let me talk about athletics specifically, Drake. Athletics in the state of Maryland are governed by what's called the MPSSAA, which is the Maryland Public School Secondary Athletic Association. Public school, secondary public school, I don't know.
It's Maryland Public Secondary School Athletic Association.
There you go. So the MPSSAA is the governing body. And so they set the rules for all of the public schools across the state in terms of competition, the number of games you can or competitions you can have in a season, when the season starts, when the season ends, how they'll conduct state competitions, the number of people on a roster, coaching certifications. They establish all of those rules. So the MPSSAA has, in conjunction with the Superintendent's Association, has made the decision to postpone athletics for the fall and winter seasons. So there will not be an official fall season right now, nor an official winter season right now. They haven't been canceled, they have been postponed, with the hope that things will develop in a very safe manner with regard to the virus and COVID-19, that beginning in, I believe it's the winter, February, the MPSSAA will put together a schedule of a shortened or abbreviated winter season, then a fall season, then a spring season. So our hope is that, yes, we will have all 3 seasons beginning in February. They'll have a preseason, then a 5-week competition for the winter sports beginning in February. Then they'll have a preseason and a 5-week competition season for the fall sports. And then the same will hold true for the spring sports. So that's our hope. That's the plan for now, that they've not been canceled, but they've been postponed into the future. That said, what we are working with now, our athletic directors are working tirelessly with our central office athletics team to put together a fall practice season that will allow all sports on a rotating basis to have some practice time outdoors this fall in a safe manner. So we have built a plan that will involve social distancing and masking and the use of water bottles and how long they can be on the field, and students getting out of their cars and coming onto the field, and the students that just finished their practice leaving the field. We have to account for all of these interactions in a safe manner. We've built a draft plan that we are working with our Department of Health. They have reviewed it. They've given us some feedback. I actually have a meeting on Thursday, I think it is, with some of our athletic personnel to review the feedback from the Department of Health. We'll make the changes they recommend. And our hope is that this, probably by mid-September, we'll be able to start having teams come back and practice in sport-specific practices. So the soccer team will get a chance to practice, and the field hockey team and the football team and the lacrosse team and the softball team. We'll build a schedule at each of those schools. The athletic director will work on that. They'll have time on the field, a couple of hours each week. So they'll probably practice twice a week in the afternoon, with a third practice virtually with their teammates and coach. And that's sort of the plan that we're working on. It's not yet ready for prime time, but know that it's in the works, and we've submitted a plan to the Department of Health. They've given us some feedback. We're going to review that feedback, and then we hope to bring our student athletes together with their teammates and with their coaches this fall. And that will be for practices. We will not be allowed to have, the final point, Tracus, will not be allowed to have competitions, because that's not allowed by the MPSSA out of season, but they are going to allow us to have out of season practices this fall.
Great. Fingers crossed.
Yep.
Fingers crossed. And I just know a lot of students are looking forward to that. I'm pretty sure they'll be glad to put down those controllers, go off the virtual field, and get back onto the real field. And I think, I'm looking at the time, I think we have time for one more question. And I think it'd be fitting if we end, I guess, looking towards the future. I've gotten a number of questions from students and parents talking about when will we be going back in person, right? What's the plan looking like for that? What will a hybrid model look like for that? So Dr. Arlotto, can you provide some insight on if we're planning for, I guess, a hybrid opening or a reopening of schools?
Absolutely. So I think it's a great question. I think it's a great question to end on. So, our hope and our plan all along has been to, while we plan for and announced virtual learning for the entire first semester, we've also said very publicly, and it's in our reopening plan that's online that anybody is able to review on our website, that as soon as we are able and allowed, we will start to bring students back into the school buildings. So that's always been our plan. While we knew we needed to state that we would be virtual for the whole first semester so that families could make plans around that possibility, we've always been hopeful, and we are more hopeful today than I was 2 weeks ago, that in our conversations with our Department of Health, seeing what our governor has stated in the Maryland State Department of Education, that we are closer now to reopening our schools for students and staff than we have been since March 16th. So with that, we are, yes, the second part of this, yes, planning for bringing students back into the school brick and mortar environment. What we're pretty confident in is that we won't go from 0 to 100 overnight. We won't go from 100% virtual environment to having 100% of the students, all the students in all the schools the next day. I'm pretty confident, and my conversations with our county health officer and his team, and we meet regularly and talk almost daily, is that we won't be able to do that overnight. We won't just all of a sudden fill our buildings. We're going to have to do it slowly, thoughtfully, methodically, with health and safety in mind, the health and safety of our students and the health and safety of our staff. So what we're thinking right now is that the middle ground, right? We're not going to go from 0 to 100 overnight. We'll go from 0 to 50. And what does that look like? Well, that would be the hybrid environment that you alluded to. Some of this is already up on our website, our virtual website, so our parents and students and community members can review some of what our thinking is. But Drake, right now, sort of what our best thinking is that we would create a hybrid environment where basically half the school would come in on a Monday and Tuesday. We would basically, let me take a step back. We basically take a school and divide all the students into A-day students and B-day students. This has nothing to do with a high school or middle school schedule that's A-day and B-day. I don't want to confuse anybody. Basically, we would divide the school in half and say half the students would come in on Monday and Tuesday. On Wednesday, the school would be closed and everybody would be at home virtually, and that would give us time to thoroughly clean the school. Then we would bring the other half of the students in on Thursday and Friday. So every student would be in the building 2 days a week for face-to-face learning, and the other 3 days a week would be at home in the virtual environment, as we will start next Tuesday. What that does is a number of things. The key is that it reduces the volume of people inside a school building. By having half the school, we can reduce the volume that are in the hallways, that are on the buses, and that are in the classrooms. This will allow us to spread the students out. And the recommendation is as close to 6 feet as possible. It might not be exactly 6 feet in every classroom, because every classroom is sometimes a little bit different, but will give us an opportunity to spread the students out. The students and staff will be wearing masks, and we will cohort the students as much as possible, meaning we'll try and keep them together, because this all of those things help reduce the possibility of spread of the virus by doing frequent hand washing, by having hand sanitizer stations around the building that students and staff can take advantage of throughout the day, by wearing masks, by social distancing, by not congregating in the gym or not congregating in other public spaces like the cafeteria or the hallways. By incorporating all those things, we then significantly reduce the risk of spreading the virus from person to person in our buildings. So that's what the hybrid environment allows us to do. It allows us to have some face-to-face instruction, what's really needed by all of us and what we want. And at the same time, it promotes the health and safety that is being asked of us by the CDC, the Maryland State Board of Education, the Maryland Department of Health, and our own health department. Our plan initially in our conversation with the Department of Health, Drake, is that we would start that hybrid environment first for our elementary schools. So if and when we're able to do that, and I think we're closer to doing that than ever before, then we will start with bringing the elementaries back in that hybrid environment. And then I think we'll invite probably our 6th graders and our 9th graders next to get them into the hybrid environment. And then we would add the other middle school and the other high school grades. None of this is etched in stone. We've not finalized any of those plans, but it's a great question. And I want to be very open and honest. And these are the things that we're talking about. And people can start to, certainly our students can start to absorb what that might look like. There are many details to work out. Like individual students sitting on a bus, we can't fill a bus with 40 or 50 students. We'd have to reduce it down to 24, one student per bus, facing forward with a mask. And that will take some very, very specific planning about which students from each neighborhood get on which bus for the day that they are scheduled to be in that building. Are they a Monday, Tuesday student, or are they a Thursday, Friday student? That's an example of some of the details we have to work out. That will take time. And so we're hoping to do that, have all of that in place, and the green light to go forward with a hybrid environment early this fall.
Great. I'm sure that a lot of students, parents, teachers are glad to hear that information, just because that's another worrying factor. And I'm glad to hear it too, because it sounds like, hopefully we can have seniors back in the building, by prom season from what I heard, because I do not want to email my prom date. That just doesn't work.
It's just not the same. And we're gonna work hard to make sure that we don't have to have the virtual proms and the virtual graduations we did last year. There are no guarantees, but I am very, very hopeful. And one of the reasons that I'm hopeful, and if you don't mind me saying this here as we conclude, Drake, and I know you've got some final words for the group, I'm hopeful because as I move about this county and I see people taking the masking and the social distancing seriously. So as I go to get my cup of coffee in the morning, or I go to the grocery store to pick up some things but on my way home, and I see people moving about, they're taking the masking and the social distancing seriously. And the more seriously we take it now, then we contribute to the reduced risk of spreading the COVID virus, which means we can get back to school sooner. And that's what we all want, when we can get those numbers to go down, because we're all taking it seriously. And we're all, not just when we wear the masks and we social distance, and we wash our hands regularly, and we practice all these safety guidelines, we're not just protecting ourselves, but we're protecting our loved ones, we're protecting our neighbors, and we're protecting this community. And that's really important. So I'm very hopeful that we are working in the right direction, that we're all contributing to that, and we're going to be in school sooner rather than later.
Great. Was it Mask Up AACPS? And Doctor, I just have one final question. I feel like I have to ask it, or I do a disservice to a large part of our community. For parents or households that English is not their first language, where can they get access to this information, right? Because this is doing good for all the English speakers out there, but not so much for, the Spanish speakers, just for an example.
Absolutely. So we have, so I talked about our reopening plan. Our reopening plan is on our website, and we have, along with the reopening schedules that everybody has had a chance to review, those have all been translated to Spanish. Our reopening plan and the schedule has been translated to Spanish for our parents to take advantage of. We are also utilizing our bilingual facilitators that have the ability, predominantly in Spanish, but in several other languages, and they are interacting with families and helping parents to navigate accessibility to their child's schedule, to the website and reopening plan, to how do I get a Chromebook, what's going to happen with meals this fall. So our bilingual facilitators are incredible. They've been working hard all summer in connecting families to resources and our information, and they're available to our families to utilize as a resource. And they are absolutely reaching out to families, talking with families, getting online with families, and helping them access those resources and to clearly understand what's happening with the opening of the school year.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Arlotto. I'm sure a lot more people will appreciate that as well. So to close, I first want to thank you, Dr. Arlotto, for taking the time to respond to all of these questions, and your team. I'm certain that your answers have helped families know what to expect when school starts in just a few days. More information, like you said, can be found on the reopening website at www.aacps.org/fall2020. I'm sure that some families still have questions that were unanswered. So if you have more specific questions, be sure to contact your principal or email fall2020@aacps.org. Thank you once again for joining us this evening. But before I close, I do not want to forget to mention one last reminder. Students, make sure you do your summer assignments because the clock is ticking. And parents, make sure you remind your students to do their summer assignments because the clock is ticking. With that, have a good evening and a fantastic first day of school. Good night, AACPS.